from our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. The legislature completed its third of 30 possible legislative days as the House and Senate met to consider legislation for the first time today. Though they mostly passed local legislation, the Senate took up one bill that is a priority for Senate President Pro Tem Greg Reed. Dubbed the Parents' Right to Know Act, Senate Bill 48 would mandate that the curriculum planned for every classroom in every school district across Alabama to be published on the school's website. That would happen either at the start of the school year or within 30 days after any changes are made to curriculum. This information would be checked by the local superintendent of education and by the local school board. The bill also requires that teachers allow parents to review all the materials and books being used in the classroom upon request.
The opportunity is to say, how can we take all of the information that's going on in a child's education as far as the syllabus and reading materials and those kinds of things, and put those on a website that becomes available to parents and guardians. That was wildly popular with everybody that I talked to, and felt like that was great information to have. I had conversation with school boards and superintendents that said the more information we provide to parents about what's going on with their children's education, the more engaged parents become. We have great teachers in Alabama, and their goal is to teach kids. So the maximum amount of time that we can give them to be able to do that is important. The fact that they're responding to parents is something great teachers are already doing. They're doing teacher-parent conferences all the time, helping parents stay engaged with their student, having teachers be engaged with the parents. So that's what we're looking to continue to foster. The goal here is transparency.
That bill passed the Senate and now goes to the House. Senate Bill 1, the controversial absentee ballot harvesting bill, was not on the floor today, as its sponsor, Senator Garland Gudger, said he wants to allow his colleagues time to read it over the weekend. It has been looking like this might be among the biggest floor fights of the session, with the Democrats deeply opposed to the Republican plan. However, Senate Minority Leader Bobby Singleton said he is working with Gudger to modify the bill into something he and his fellow Democrats could potentially live with.
With the substitute that is coming, I think it still gives a person the ability to go out and give assistance. We're okay with that, to give assistance, to make sure that it can still be mailed by mail and by post office, and those things that has the penalties on it, where you can't pay someone for their ballot, that's illegal anyway. We're fine with that. We don't want to see that anyway, so we're okay with that. While I may think that the penalties are a little stiff, but at the end of the day, if that's the compromise that we have to make, then that's the compromise we have to make. But still, the free access to the ballot is still there, and people still have that right to give the assistance where assistance may be needed. But we got bills like critical race theory that's coming up. You got bills like DEI that's going to come. We have bills like the voting ballot harvesting bill. So those that we have some real concerns. We're providing amendments to those bills. We want to sit down with the sponsors and try to work these out. We think that we can be able to provide some guidance if they'll just sit down like we did today and have some collaboration. We'll get some things done for the betterment of the people of the state of Alabama. We don't have those unintended consequences that hurt people.
The Senate will gavel back into session for the fourth legislative day next Tuesday here at the State House. The House stuck to simply passing resolutions today, as there was no legislative agenda to speak of, and one resolution brought a very special guest to the House. Gunnar Henderson, the American League Rookie of the Year, visited the legislature today. He's a native of Selma and attended Auburn University. He was honored with resolutions in both chambers, but we caught up with him in the House.
It's really special being able to have the support of the House and being able to just be recognized for all that hard work, and being able to just show kids that no matter what their dreams are, just hard work will get you to wherever you want to go, and being able to do that each and every day, you'll be able to achieve your dreams.
We learned the details of the comprehensive gambling proposal being pushed in the House today. There are two bills, House Bill 151, the basic proposed constitutional amendment that, if passed, would go to a vote of the people, and House Bill 152, the enabling legislation that contains the details of the far-reaching gambling plan. Here's a quick breakdown of what the bill would do. The bill would scrap all of Alabama's existing gambling laws and constitutional amendments, including those local bingo amendments. Then the plan would institute a state lottery, expand and regulate casino gambling, and legalize sports betting. It would set up a commission with a staff structure to regulate the industry, with commissioners appointed by the governor and legislative leaders. 10 casinos would be allowed under the plan, including the current 3 Porch Bandit Creek Indian sites. Operators could bid for licenses in Macon, Greene, Mobile, Jefferson, Houston, and Lowndes counties, where of course there are existing gambling operations today. There would also be an additional license awarded pending approval of a compact with the Porch Bandit Creek Indians. Casinos would be taxed at 24%, while sports betting would be taxed at 17%. Proponents estimate revenue to the state would be between $800 million and $1 billion annually. Where would that money go? Unlike previous plans that earmarked most of the funds, this plan is more flexible. Lottery proceeds would all go toward a special fund set aside for education needs. Casino and sports betting revenue would be placed in a trust fund to shore up general fund accounts and then used for expenditures like mental health care, rural health care, state parks, state retiree benefits, drug courts, and other non-recurring expenses. So there you have it. We're going to be hearing a lot more about this legislation as the session moves forward. Tune in to our Weekend Review show tomorrow when I'll interview State Representative Chris Blackshear, who is sponsoring this legislation. I'll also talk with Brian Hardin of the Alabama Farmers Federation, one of several conservative groups that are opposing the expansion of gambling. That's Capitol Journal tomorrow at 7:30. The gambling bill is one of a handful of bills that we are following going into next week when the legislature returns. Another is that absentee ballot harvesting bill we talked about earlier in the show, and also a bill revising the ethics code. I'm actually going to be talking with State Representative Matt Simpson later in the show. He's the one sponsoring these ethics code changes, and we discussed his draft bill at length. Turning for a moment to Washington, D.C., where U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville today got a chance to question leaders of the country's biggest pharmaceutical companies about the high costs of prescription drugs. Tuberville asked if duplicative regulations caused product delays and cost increases. The answer he got from Merck CEO Robert Davis is long, but it's worth listening to. He's talking about drugs used to treat cancer, Alzheimer's, and other conditions.
I'm a true believer of capitalism. I believe that we have the best healthcare system in the world. Problem is, we've got the federal government involved in it, and it's not implemented the way probably it should be. That being said, I just got a few questions here on a couple of things. Mr. Davis, can you explain me something? The Biden administration has 2 huge priorities. Dictate prices of prescription drugs, specifically small molecule drugs, and cure cancer. Can you walk me through how those priorities might be in direct contradiction of each other?
Well, Senator, and I think what you're referring to is what is called the pill penalty.
That's correct.
Underneath the IRA, and what that does is effectively says that at 9 years post your first approval, your price or your drug will be negotiated, and if it's a small molecule, it's 13 if it's a large. The issue that raises is that it disfavors small molecule development, and the reality of it is, if you look across the majority of cancer treatments, they are still small molecules. And as Chris pointed out earlier, the development of cancer drugs usually starts in a phase starting at the very most sickest patient, the last stage of disease, and then you work forward into earlier stages of disease where, in fact, you can start to maybe talk about cure. To do those studies in early stage disease, often called adjuvant or neoadjuvant care, and we have 9 approvals in that space, those studies can take 7 to 9 years to do. So obviously, if at 9 years I have to significantly reduce the price of that drug to a point that it is potentially, at basically no profit, my incentive to do those follow-on studies is not there. And that is our worry, that if you look at cancer care, you're going to see patients suffer because we can't get to really talking about cure, which is in earlier stages of disease. I'd also point out, you didn't ask about Alzheimer's and neuroscience diseases, but most CNS diseases also require small molecules because large molecules, biologics, can't penetrate the blood-brain barrier. So we are disincentivizing some of the largest areas of sickness and chronic need in our society through that pill penalty you referred to.
We'll be right back with State Representative Matt Simpson.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Montgomery native Percy L. Julian was an internationally acclaimed chemist. The third African-American to receive a PhD in chemistry, he specialized in the chemistry of natural products and their synthesis in the laboratory. This technology is very important in medicines, food products, paints, and firefighting foams, among other things. Julian received many awards, including election to the National Academy of Sciences and the National Inventors Hall of Fame.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Matt Simpson of Daphne. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Appreciate you having me back. Glad to be here.
Well, it's been quite a week. Just the first week of legislative session. How's it going so far?
It's been hectic. There's been a lot going on. We start with the State of the State Tuesday night, and that's a long night as it is. And as we get the start of session and you see some of these bills drop that get everybody's attention, it's going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be buckle up your seatbelts and just hold on tight.
Yep, it always is. And so that's the thing. That's why I wanted to talk to you, because there are so many of these big ticket items. People are talking about gambling, school choice, voting, all these things that are going to take up a lot of attention. But you've got a really key issue that's maybe flying under the radar a little bit, and that is ethics, revising the ethics code. I'm going back to 2010 when the legislature, after that takeover election, revised the ethics code, but it's really been problematic ever since, right? Little things here and there have been problematic. So I know you've been working on a bill, maybe ready to introduce soon. Walk me through what you're doing and sort of what led up to this point.
So you have to go back to 2010 to talk about this. The handshake with Alabama, that was when the Republicans came into the legislature and took over as the controlling party in the legislature. They ran as part of the handshake with Alabama. One of the 5 fingers of the handshake with Alabama was ethics reform. So what they did, Governor Riley was still in office, but Governor Bentley had not been sworn in. The legislature comes into office in November, when after we win the election, the legislature comes in. What happened then was they called a special session in that interim period where Governor Riley was still the governor, the new legislature had come in, but Governor Bentley hadn't officially taken office. And they went through and they passed in a special session, they passed an ethics revision for them. I think the intent was correct. I think the mindset of, hey, we really need to be strong on ethics, we need to make sure that we have tighten our laws here. I think the problem came, it was kind of rushed. It wasn't vetted through the process. So we've had a number of issues that have arisen because the favorite phrase of everybody, unintended consequences of what we're looking at here. So that's kind of really where we started of, all right, there's problems. You've seen reports from commissions and task forces have been created about problems with our ethics laws in Alabama. You've got decisions and opinions from the Court of Criminal Appeals, from the Supreme Court. We've got all kind of information coming to us and saying, there's a problem with your ethics laws. It's kind of the third rail in Alabama politics, but it's time for us we can't just duck our head in the sand and say, I'm not going to take up this issue anymore. there are 300,000 people that are directly affected by the ethics laws in Alabama, and that extends to 1 million by the time you count the extended families, which still fall under the ethics laws as they're written.
So you're talking about public officials, whether that's the governor, lawmakers, but also local public officials.
Local elected officials, but it's not just your local electeds. It's not what you would think of a public official. These are your teachers, your firefighters, your first responders, your city maintenance workers, all your city employees, all your county employees. I don't think that the legislature fully intended to cover nearly a quarter of our population when they drafted these laws in 2010. So that's what we're trying to do. Instead of taking this shotgun approach where we're just going at everything, we kind of wanted to use more of a sniper issue and kind of focus on these are the people we're trying to collect. These are the people we're trying to enforce. And let's make sure that the run-of-the-mill everyday employee doesn't have their hands tied behind their back. We want to be able to recruit the best and the brightest to be able to run for office or serve in the public, work for a city, work for a county. We don't want people worried about, well, I don't want to do that because I see how this stuff goes. We want to have the best and the brightest come in and be able to work for our government.
So I know you haven't dropped the bill yet, but as it stands right now, what does the plan do?
Okay, so right now the plan, we have a draft. We released a draft yesterday. What the quick thing is the draft will do is it will take criminal prosecutions and put them under the jurisdiction of the district attorney and the attorney general. Meaning if you can go to prison or jail, then the prosecutors will be the prosecutors on every other case. Right now, the laws as they are, the Ethics Commission has some jurisdiction over criminal laws, and that just didn't seem right to me. So let's make it streamlined. Let's make it easy for everybody to understand. Let's make it black and white where people can know if you did this, if you violate the law, then this is what you're facing. Let's let the people that are prosecuting it have this jurisdiction. We're giving the Ethics Commission complete control over civil violations and civil penalties. So like if it's a fine, if it's you have to pay restitution, you have some type of sanction from there, that'll be the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission. But if you're going to prison, the real bad people, that's the jurisdiction of the prosecutors.
That makes sense because there has been that gray area and honestly some friction between the Ethics Commission and the Attorney General's office or just prosecutors in general. So that does make sense. Let me ask you, you said you have a draft and you're shopping it around to your colleagues. What's the feedback been so far? This is an issue that affects y'all directly as lawmakers.
It does. I think a lot of people, we're not trying to hide this under the radar. We're not trying to sneak this through with gaming. It's just gaming is dominating all the oxygen in the air right now. So I don't think people have had a chance to look at it. And that's why I'm taking this specific approach that I'm taking. So next week on Wednesday, we're going to have a committee meeting at 10:30 of our ethics committee meeting. And at that meeting, we're going to have LSA kind of give us a rundown of this is what this bill does, this is what this has, this is what we changed, this is why we've changed it. Kind of a full-on. We had several meetings this summer. I think we had 4 or 5 meetings this summer where we had informative meetings about what the bills, how we got to where we are. This informative meeting will talk about the draft, and that'll be on Wednesday the 14th. Then the next week, we're going to take input from members of the committee or anybody in the public that has any input and says, hey, I don't like this, I like this, have you thought about changing this? And that'll be on the week of February 21st. Then we'll take all of that input, kind of figure out how we want to draft the bill, and drop a bill hopefully by the last week of February, to kind of go through the process of with ethics. It's very weird. You don't want to drop a bill and then have 15 substitutions where somebody says, look at this, this bill currently the draft is 63 pages. Well, I don't want to draft a substitution and have the committee have to find something in the middle of 63 pages and not know, well, we changed one line. We want to have a full draft, a full ready bill to be able to put when we drop it at the end of February.
Yeah, fix it on the front end. That's smart because it's something this complicated. I could see you having a lot of revisions and amendments along the way because everybody has an opinion. And I remember how complicated, back in 2010, I remember how complicated the issue of principle was, right? Who does it apply to? If you're obviously if you're a CEO or a lobbyist, but if you're a board member, if you're a family of a board member, are your interactions with public officials, governed by the ethic code? It was a real sticky issue. So how did y'all deal with that in terms, the principle issue that's always been lingering around there?
We've got a definition of principle, and we've kind of included someone that hires, fires, or directs a lobbyist activities. So if you're a board member but you're not really involved in what the lobbyist does or what's going on in Montgomery, then you're not really a principal in that. Now, you may be a prohibited source, and that's kind of what we've changed the language to be. We've got the definition of principal, but we've also included prohibited sources, meaning if you're trying to influence an action of the legislature, then you would fall under that prohibited source to come through. So if you're doing something with the intent of influencing, then you would be subject to the gift ban.
Right.
You know, if your actions, and we can tell based on what you do and what your actions are, then your prohibited source would where we fall under that.
They can't go out and buy you a set of golf clubs.
Right. We put a limit on that. We changed the gift ban to where it would be anything less than $100 would be not considered a gift. It's de minimis is what you would call it. De minimis is the language we've used. Anything more than $100 has to fall under the exceptions that are already currently in the statute, and that report has to be reported to the Ethics Commission.
Okay.
So if someone has a conference, an educational conference, if they have a widely attended event or a widely attended dinner, if they're spending more than $100 per person, then they have to report that, or more than $100 on a legislator or an elected official, then they have to report that, and that report will be available for the public to see. It'll be on that. The Ethics Commission will be responsible for releasing that, so that everybody can know this is where the money went.
Yeah, and like you said, like those widely attended events, those happen all the time, and it's not like it's something nefarious or wrong, but some transparency would be nice to know. Okay, we're all going to BCA, we're all going to manufacture, whatever it is. I do think that transparency has been lacking in the past. While I've got you though, you mentioned just the fact that this is third rail, meaning if you touch it, you die, because any revision to the ethics code, really for the last 10 or 15 years, has been seen as, oh, you're trying to weaken it. You're going to try to roll back these monumental ethics reforms and things like that. And for that reason, the legislature really has said, all right, we don't want to be blamed for that. So that being the case, how do you go about actually getting this done? Is it going to be an education process with constituents, with lawmakers themselves? Walk me through your tactics about how you plan to actually get this done.
The first thing I want to do is commend the members of the committee that have spent so much time this summer and this winter getting ready for this. So what I'm trying to do is inform them of what's going on. I sent them they were the first people that got a copy of the draft. Nobody got it outside of the committee first. So I want them to have the opportunity to be able to ask questions, and that's why when we come in next week, we're going to give them a full presentation. It's going to be streamed. The public is invited. It'll be streamed on the internet, same as all of our meetings have been in the past. We want to be able to just inform people this is kind of what we're thinking and where we're going. I am not the smartest person in the room, and I will tell you that. I'm generally not the smartest person in the room that I go into, but I try to figure out who is and ask them their opinions. We've asked some experts in the state of Alabama on this law, experts outside of the state, nationwide, the American Law Institute. We've really gone above and beyond to try to find what's going on nationally, what's going on around through here, to make sure we're not making the same mistakes. I want the bill to be vetted. I want people to understand this is what we're doing, this is why, and these are the consequences from it. I don't want to wake up and come back here and somebody's like, oh, well, y'all messed this part of it. So that's another reason why we have the bill going into effect in June of 2025, after sine die of 2025. So if we pass this bill this session, we still have the off season to come in and say, hey, if y'all didn't think about this part, y'all missed this part. So we're going to try to
gives you a runway a little bit.
It does. My goal is not to get it right now. My goal is to get it right. It's too important for the state of Alabama to mess this up again. So my goal is to make sure we have the right bill. And it's not going to be my opinion. It's not just going to be, I said this because I thought, it's going to be, please give us some input. Tell us where the hurdles are. Tell us where the landmines in this bill are. If you've practiced law and have practiced ethics, or you're an expert on this stuff, reach out. I've reached out to former members of the commission. I've reached out to former directors. I've kind of had conversations with anybody at ethics. If they've done anything with ethics, we've had conversations on this. So,
well, it's going to be a really interesting issue to watch. And again, with so much attention on these other big ticket items, I'm really glad that we got a conversation on this, because this is going to affect a lot of people. So thank you for coming and sharing this, and we'll be following as it moves forward.
I appreciate your time.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page, You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
Rosa Parks is one of the most enduring symbols of the American civil rights era of the mid-20th century. She was active in the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP, serving as its field secretary. Although she was not the first black woman in Montgomery to be arrested for doing so, her 1955 arrest for violating the segregation ordinance by refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man triggered a 382-day boycott of Montgomery city buses and prompted a challenge of the ordinance's constitutionality in federal court. In December 1956, after the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed a district court ruling against segregation, Parks took a symbolic victory ride near the front of a city bus. Parks continued to work for civil rights causes throughout her life and was awarded the nation's highest honors for her role in the movement.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with our Week in Review episode at 7:30 here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.